Well, that's one way to keep the offseason fresh and interesting. What is this news exactly? Well, a majority of the Overwatch League teams have officially banded together to hire a British law firm to collectively bargain against Activision Blizzard amongst a bunch of their growing frustrations with the league. Credit goes where it's due to esports journalist Jacob Wolf, who broke the news on Twitter earlier this afternoon, January 18th. If you're not familiar with collective bargaining, here's a basic definition of what it's all about. Collective bargaining, in simple terms, is basically a process in which working people, through their unions, this case would be Overwatch League franchises, where they negotiate contracts with their employers, Activision Blizzard / Overwatch League, to determine their terms of employment, which includes things like their pay, their wages, benefits, and in this case, the most important thing, compensation. Collective bargaining agreements are very common. You can look at it through NFL, NBA, NHL, any of that stuff. It gives a lot of the players and the owners power compared to the league. It's very important for balance, and it's just not something that the Overwatch League has, which is really tough. So that is why these teams, as a union, are going through the process of collective bargaining to get some of that compensation and that leverage that they rightfully deserve. And why is it exactly that they're doing this? Well, to put it simply, no one's making any money. Teams are seeking some sort of economic relief after all these years of high operating cost and really bad revenue, not having any advertisers in the league at this point in time, and generally just having to shell out all of this money to be a franchise in this league. What some people need to recognize is it cost a lot of money to be a part of the Overwatch League. This wasn't some small project. There were very, very large aspirations, so as a result, the cost to buy a team was ridiculously expensive. Just back in Season 1, every team was shelling out about $20 million to franchise tag a team, which would of course be paid over time, and in Season 2 for the expansion teams, the price was even higher. So we're talking every single franchise committing at least $20 million, putting that all on the table and not even making a fraction of that back. And it's not like Activision Blizzard is really doing anything to help. Honestly, they're kind of just twiddling their thumbs, it feels like. Negotiations never seem to go anywhere. There's been growing frustrations amongst all of the owners for the most part, really, and it's gotten to its boiling point. They are sick and tired of negotiating, getting nowhere, and feeling like absolutely nobody is listening to them. The money thing is the biggest thing, right? Money talks. That's what we all want in life. We want to make money. We want to prosper. But it goes way beyond that. I'm sure their frustrations grow just from the simple fact that there's so many miscommunication issues that always seem to go on between the higher-ups and the league itself. There's so much evidence piled up against Activision Blizzard in this situation, be it through not listening or not helping out these teams financially, not delivering on their promises, completely ignoring feedback. It just all combines together to get us to this point. It's as Jacob Wolf says in his article, which I will leave a link to in the description. Teams are just sick and tired of this continuous missed promise after missed promise on potential revenue, as well as the high operating cost to continue having their team be a thing and to take care of their players. As a result of all of the growing frustrations, recently teams decided to go out there and hire a media and technology focused law firm with experience in both traditional sports and esports to negotiate on their behalf with the league. The goal for these discussions is to help teams get some sort of economic relief. I'm not exactly sure how much that's going to be, but just something to help the fact that teams have been spending anywhere from $7.5 to $10 million in franchise payments over the last 6 years. And as a reminder, there's also the fact that on top of that, they're spending $1+ million every single year to maintain their teams. So what that means is that some of these franchises have spent $16+ million on this league and have put all of their investments into it in hopes that it would thrive because that's what was promised for them. And in return, they have gotten viewership that is going down by the year and no real way currently to profit in sight. It just sucks, man. You don't listen to your feedback from all of your pro players and from people who seriously enjoy the game. You're killing the game on one front through poor balancing and boring compositions in some people's eyes, boring heroes, not nerfing, all of that good stuff. And on the other side of it, you're doing all the things in the world to upset your Overwatch League fans and all of the owners and management and players. Literally nobody's winning right now, and it just feels awful to watch it all play out. And through all the terrible news and disappointments and losing interest in the game and therefore the esports scene, the frustrations are growing to the absolute maximum. Your fans aren't caring anymore, your players aren't being taken care of well enough, they're not making enough money, your owners aren't profiting, you don't have any sponsors really for the most part. You had like, what, a couple this season? You've lost all of your sponsors because of the drama that has gone on with your company. It's an absolute disaster. It's worth noting that right now negotiations between the teams, the law firm, and Activision Blizzard have only just begun, but tensions are still really, really high right now as everyone tries to figure out what they can do, and if Blizzard will even help to begin with, or if they'll just be petty and like shut down the league or something. It is so unclear what is going to happen. It sucks because this could be a really good thing, but also a bad thing. It really will depend on Activision Blizzard and if they're actually willing to negotiate or not. In an ideal world, this could end up being something that benefits the Overwatch League teams. Let's say Activision Blizzard actively listens and they try and negotiate. Well, maybe that could restore some trust in these franchise owners and maybe they'll be a bit happier. We should all be siding with the Overwatch League franchises in this situation. They deserve it. They deserve to be fighting for this. It's good that they're doing this. They shouldn't just sit there and do nothing when they know they're losing money that they shouldn't. The question's going to be if Activision Blizzard actually cares. That's the big what if. And in all likelihood, I'd say no. They probably won't care, they won't help that much, and in that case, we're probably going to head more towards an absolute explosion. I really like to try and stay optimistic because I love this league with all my heart, but just be prepared for the worst. I'm not saying anything will happen, I'm not saying the league is definitely going to shut down, but you can't rule out the possibility ever at this point because of all of the disasters we have seen over the years and Activision's Blizzard's inability to make any correct decisions whatsoever. As for how long these frustrations have been growing, well, it's been quite a few years at this point. We gotta go all the way back to 2020. That's when the frustrations really started thanks to COVID and all of the league structure changes we had to go through. Teams were talking together and planning to maybe take collective action in the future all the way back then. They were complaining to the league over and over again since COVID, but pretty much got nothing. And because they've been hit with all of this nothingness over the years, recently they decided to organize and just go through with this. And it was partially led by Overactive Media, who owned the Toronto Defiant. Overactive has worked with this law firm previously with its League European Championship team, Mad Lions, so Toronto Defiant trusts them, and honestly, I do too. That sounds pretty promising. Thanks to all of the stuff with COVID and the struggles and whatnot, Activision Blizzard did level the debt that all these franchises have to pay. They reduced the balance to $16 million for all 20 teams, but everybody still does owe somewhere between $6 to $7.5 million. And considering that a lot of teams are operating at a loss consistently, that's not good. That's still going to take a long time to pay off. Operating costs, like we were saying, are very, very high, and for teams who are owned by the big boys, there is a lot of concern about how they can even maintain an Overwatch League team when they just don't have any cash flow. Just from one example, the COO of the Houston Outlaws parent company, Beasley Esports, stated that even though the team is making $1.4 million in revenue, they are still operating at a loss. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. They're making almost 1.5 mil and they're still at a loss. Again, just from the operating cost, that's $1 million down the drain right away, and that is on top of the franchise tag fees. Operating costs are just too much. The way this league is structured is incredibly flawed right now. It seemed like a great idea on the surface, but it just hasn't worked out that way. A global league, something that's never been done before like this, it was really cool. It was a really, really cool idea. But after COVID hit, all of that got ruined, and we haven't really stabilized or changed our minds or anything. We've kept things the way they have been, and it's just made it more difficult for these teams to survive. Some plans sound great on the surface, but when they break and they don't go according to plan, you have to have some sort of backup, and I just don't feel like Activision Blizzard and Overwatch League had that backup in mind. And now, here we are, sitting in this spot, wondering what the heck happened. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but things were so much greater when everybody just operated out of LA in the Blizzard arena. I know you want to tailor towards your Chinese viewership and your Korean viewership and everybody out of Asia, and EU viewers are happier as well since they don't have to stay up late for some of the games. They can wake up and just enjoy those matches no problem during the afternoon or whatever. But because of that, because we're going through that route, now teams are unhappy. It would have been different if we were still on that global system where everybody had their own homestands, everybody traveled together, but we're not in that place anymore. A lot of this stuff is online, everybody's on their own separate islands, and it's just really rough on everybody. It just makes it so much more expensive to live and to operate the right way. When you're in LA, it's a lot simpler. Obviously, it's expensive to live over there, but everybody's all together. Trust me, I have enjoyed this league every single year of its existence. The entertainment value has been great still ever since pivoting online, in my opinion, but nothing is ever going to beat what we had in 2018 and even 2019 to a certain extent. Aside from that being peak viewership and interest and entertainment and all of that stuff, it was just a much simpler time, a lot easier. You had Blizzard right there to talk to, communication was easier, and I don't know for certain, but I'm assuming the operating costs were at least a little bit more manageable, having everybody in the same place together in LA. Everybody practices in around the same places, you all go to the Blizzard arena. It just all seemed a lot more convenient that way. But then we had to go through with our plans. That was it. The lease on the Blizzard Arena was over. It was time to move on and do all of these exciting home games. But then COVID hit, we had to pivot, but then we never pivoted back. But maybe this just isn't feasible. Maybe what I'm thinking is unrealistic. Regardless, I don't know how negotiations will go for the simple fact that esports in general right now isn't doing too great with their fundraising and investments. It's being called the esports winter. Fundraising cycles aren't doing well. People are struggling to find revenue, and it's leading to a lot of layoffs and big time scaling back on how much they can spend. Advertising dollars aren't going too well either. That's getting smaller. And there's just a big time question on whether it's worth investing in esports right now, which really sucks. So when you combine that with Activision Blizzard's tendency to make poor decisions, we're in for a very interesting ride over the next couple of months. But yeah, according to Jacob Wolf, that's the scoop right now. A majority of the Overwatch League teams are seeking law firm to get some sort of monetary compensation. How it will go? Only time will tell. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Is the league screwed? Is there something we can do? Do you have any general thoughts? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League news related, especially as we go towards these treacherous and uncertain times, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.